Hello, my name is Deja Jones, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on Chapter 11, which is Personal Computers. Just to overview this chapter in particular, it talked about personal computers, but it also gave us a timeline of the evolution of personal computers. So most of my presentation is going to be talking about the evolution of personal computers as it pertains to the chapter. So you might be wondering, what is a personal computer, or a PC? A personal computer is designed to be used by one person at a time. You might be wondering, okay, so I do that anyway. So the difference between a personal computer and what was called a regular computer was originally computers were used and only afforded for the use of companies in which they were attached to one terminal for multiple users under a single server where information was shared and accessible to all. So regardless of if you were on one computer and there was someone else on another computer, each person would be able to access the data or the information being input into each computer from their computers because they were all connected to one server. Not to be confused, personal computers can be both a desktop, a laptop, and a mini notebook computer. So just a little bit of a background on the origin of personal computers. So the United States Census Bureau, when they started to collect data on the population, the geographical demographics of their country, they found that it took them 7+ years to pretty much analyze the data. And by the time the data reaches 7 years and you're just learning how to analyze it, it's pretty much too late and you have to throw away the data and start collecting more. So they wanted a more quicker and a more efficient way to gather data that wouldn't take that long, that would cut their time in half. So they adopted a clicker system, much like what most train conductors use when they come by and collect your ticket, and they do the clickers to kind of keep tabs on how many people are on the train at what time. They adopted a similar method, but they also found that that wasn't efficient enough for them in their data as well. So the first computers to surface were actually called calculators. It's still what we use today as calculators. The reason why they weren't called computers is because computers was actually the title, like the job title of the person who was doing the mathematical solving. These computers were used for counting residents as per the U.S. Census Bureau. It was used for calculating artillery firing coordinates during the time of war. And it was also used for forecasting the weather. That's just a little bit of the background on the origin of computers or calculators. So I want to start talking about the evolution of the PC itself. So the first general purpose computer emerged after World War II. It was a 30-ton electronic numerical integrator and computer that could count up to 50 in under a second. So manufacturers, they found that this new technology, it saved them an enormous amount of time when it came to collecting data. Then in 1950, Sperry Rand released a universal automatic computer, which was 400 square feet. So these computers, they weren't like the desktops or like the laptops that we see today. These were big systems, big machinery. So in 1975, IBM releases what they call a MIT Altair. It was the first practical personal computer on the market. It used an Intel chip, much like a lot of today's technology also uses. And at that time, the Intel chip was created by Microsoft, which also emerged that year in 1975. In 1976, Apple emerges with a new computer, and this computer came with a keyboard. Other computers, they didn't come with keyboards. They came with input systems where you input data or paperwork into a system, or they had the joysticks or maybe like 1 or 2 buttons, but it wasn't a full QWERTY keyboard. So in 1977, Apple, it released their second model of their new computer with a keyboard, which isn't really unlike Apple. They're known to release technology very often. So you buy the iPhone 5, the iPhone 6 comes out the next month, and you're like, oh shoot, I should have waited. And then so forth to the iPhone 7. In 1981, IBM introduces an IBM PC. So IBM was originally a manufacturer of the hardware and the software that a lot of people used in their computers, but in 1981 they decided that they were going to release their own PC. This PC was also powered by Intel chip. They also used what we call a disk operating system that was manufactured by Microsoft. In 1981 is where we see the first laptop. It was called the Osborne. It was 24 pounds and only had a 5-inch screen. It did not do well. It was not successful, which is why today we don't really hear about the Osborne. We don't hear about the Osborne at all. So in 1983, Apple releases the Lisa. The Lisa was built upon what we call a GUI, which is a graphical user interface that had an ease of use advantage and premium price. So Apple releases a PC that not only was cheaper to make and cheaper to sell, but it was also easier for users to use. So then in the 1900s is when we start to see mobile tablet computers surface. They started to have flatter screens, larger screens. Some of them were also touchscreen, but it never received a wide acceptance from companies because around this time, computers were shifting more so away from just company use to also consumerism and for the mass population. So in 2010, Apple releases the iPad. And then in 2012, Microsoft introduces the Surface PC tablet with a detachable keyboard to replace traditional laptops and tablet competitors. So we look at this evolution of PCs, we kind of see that it comes or it stems from these big machines that were only used for companies, and then as time goes on they become smaller and smaller and used for a wider range of audiences. So here are some PC trends. So some trends that I learned or that I noticed in this chapter is that smaller forms of computers are replacing desktops and laptops, and bigger machines are being replaced less often. So people are more inclined to use desktops or laptops less. So for every house you walk into, you might see one desktop to every 4 laptops or tablets or mobile phones. However, bigger companies are still holding true to the bigger machines in the single terminal system. I'm seeing that shipments and sales of larger personal computers have fallen from 2001's record of 360 million sold worldwide, while sales for smaller mobile devices continue to rise. So this trend also reinforces that people are leaning more towards things that are portable, so smaller mobile devices, so tablets, iPads, and even cell phones, as opposed to PCs like desktops, laptops, and notebooks. PCs have evolved from bulky, difficult to operate machines to even smaller, faster, and less expensive, easier to use devices. For most of the world's population, their first computer is a smartphone or tablet, not a PC. So you might see a child and they'll learn how to use a smartphone or a tablet before they learn how to use a laptop, or even before they learn basic literacy skills. Industry data shows continued replacement of PCs and laptops with phones and similar devices smaller and more portable than PCs. So even with PCs, they're still evolving to the point where people are looking for things that are smaller. So you have the smartphone watches, you have cell phones, you have tablets. So people are leaning more towards this. So given all this information, given all of this knowledge of the evolution of the PC and how it's transformed from like these big machineries only used for either war or only used for big companies to something that you can use right in your home, like this laptop that I'm on right now, or even this camera that I'm recording on and my cell phone. Given the development of mobile devices as a growing replacement for PCs, we know still that mobile devices can't perform as aptly as PCs. So it's not as easy for us to be able to print a document from a smartphone or a smartwatch as it is to print from a PC like a desktop or a laptop. unless you have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth capabilities. But even then, you know, that's on a basis where you're in a network that has that capability. We know that it's not as easy to type a paper on a tablet or a smartphone, or you certainly can't do it on a Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch. So given all of this knowledge, will the portability of mobile devices and tablets or the efficiency of desktops and laptops win when we talk about the evolution of PC and we talk about the future of PC? That is your question.